we're continuing our sugar discussions. Now, the South African Sugar Association recently reaffirmed in a press release that they are committed to a transformation agenda that prioritizes sustainability and support for small-scale growers. Joining us in studio again is Advocate Fay Mukaddam, SASA's chairperson. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Susan. Appreciate it.
First of all, tell me what exactly constitutes somebody to be a small-scale cane grower?
I'm so glad you asked that question because everybody talks about it and not everybody understands it. So just to be clear, a small-scale grower is a grower who delivers on average 225 tons of recoverable value over a period of 4 years. What that amounts to is less than 1,800 tons of cane per season on average. So it's a grower that might have a small area under cane, and so you're looking at a reasonably small amount of cane tonnage being delivered of less than 1,800 tons, and from that, the actual recoverable value from that 1,800 tons would be then 225 tons over the period, of course, of 4 years.
Between 2019 and 2024, SASA has invested 1.12 billion rands into small-scale black growers over those 5 years. And now you've committed a further 238.9 million rands for the 2024-25 growing season. Is this correct?
That's absolutely correct. So that funding has been allocated to black growers, with the majority of that funding being allocated to black small-scale growers.
And could you perhaps break down these figures? Who are the farmers you are helping, and what are the terms and conditions of these funds?
Absolutely. And I'm just going to rely on my notes because I want to get the exact figures so that also the viewers are working with facts, right? So in terms of those funds, we have been able, through our Transformation Intervention Fund at SASA, an average of 13,350 small-scale growers have benefited from that fund per season. Of the 1.12 billion rand paid from that Transformation Intervention Fund, 592 million rand was paid to black small-scale growers in 5 years, and 281 million rand was paid directly to large black cane growers in the same period. So it's really important to see that 1.12 billion rand, and it's important also to make the point, Susan, that fund is actually an industry fund. The monies from that fund come from the industry members themselves. So you can see it is an industry that is taking transformation very seriously, and it is taking the support of black growers very seriously, with the majority of that money being allocated very clearly to black small-scale growers. You did also ask just about the conditions,
yes,
in terms of the fund allocation. And the condition is really quite simple, is that you must be actively farming sugarcane and you must be delivering that cane. And I think those are two fair conditions, because what we've seen, unfortunately, of course, with the series of events that have challenged our industry, is you see sometimes that the growers then either leave sugarcane as a crop, or else they are farming on their land other crops in addition to sugarcane. So obviously, with us being a sugar association looking after our industry, we then, and also being reliant for this transformation funding from our industry levies of our members, that we need to allocate it to growers, to farmers, black growers, predominantly small scale, who are actually farming sugarcane and who are delivering that cane to the mills. Susanna, I also want to highlight the point that whilst that allocation is happening in terms of those splits, so like I say, targeting black growers, majority small scale growers, I just want to draw yours and the viewers' attention to some specific projects where we've leveraged the transformation intervention funding so that it makes it more practical. We're not just talking kind of figures on a spreadsheet. So we've allocated about 46 million rand to infrastructure rehabilitation, where we've got a project in Kamazi region, and that has specifically benefited black small-scale growers, where we've actually increased the area under cane with an additional 300 hectares. We've also allocated 3.3 million rand to small-scale growers for the Mkuze rail siding. And what that does is it helps our small-scale growers to actually get their cane delivered via rail to the Felixton mill. Because something that is hugely challenging for small-scale growers particularly is that the infrastructure isn't always supportive of getting the cane, once it's harvested, to the mill timeously. And we've only got a 48-hour window in which to do that. So that, even though it might sound like a small quantum, just over 3 million rand, it's made a huge impact. We've also helped with installing a dummy spiller, just over 7 million rand at Gledhow, one of our mills. And what that has done is that dummy spiller, our small-scale grower hauliers, the transport guys, are actually directed to the dummy spiller so that the hauliers can offload the cane and then go back quickly to get additional loads. And what that does is it reduces time and it reduces costs for transport, which obviously again has a positive domino effect for our black small-scale growers. So those are some particular examples where we certainly are very proud that we actually are able to measure and manage in a positive way the impact of that transformation spend allocation.
SASA's implemented a premium price payment scheme. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So what happens with the premium price payment scheme is that we have identified that small-scale growers, simply because of their size, simply because we are often dealing in rural parts of our provinces, so you've got very dispersed farms, and you've got small pieces of land being cultivated and farmed, that there are diseconomies of scale which impact the black small-scale grower in an unreasonable, adverse manner in comparison to our other growers. And so the industry decided, and again, I want to keep emphasizing this, the industry came up with these solutions. But what we did is that we leveraged our phase 1 of the master plan for this premium price payment scheme. And what we did is we then said that for a period of 3 seasons, escalating annually, we would allocate 60 million rand to those black small-scale growers under the premium price payment scheme. Obviously, with it escalating annually, after the 3 seasons, we're now sitting at, and then this last season, the current season, 24-25, we're sitting at about 72 million rand. And what happens there is that you find that that targeted approach of funding and allocation has actually meant that our black small-scale growers are able to remain in the industry, able to continue to farm sugarcane, and have actually, it's had a more positive impact in terms of productivity, and that they are able to almost sustain themselves and then continue, hopefully growing within the industry. So the benefits of that have been enormous.
This might be an impolite question, but small growers, there's this amount that's allocated for small-scale growers in an industry that's really struggling at this point because the market isn't really there. Aren't you sort of setting these guys up for failure over the long term?
Yeah, I think, Susan, it's not an impolite question. I think it's the right question to be asked. And again, this is hopefully where the viewers will benefit from some facts, is that we, in terms of our reimagining the sugarcane industry strategy, have identified that indeed we actually need to increase the area under cane, not decrease it. we also then need to look at the sugarcane stalk in its entirety and look at what all the possible products are, the alternative byproducts are, as well as different potential markets are that we can target in terms of extracting all the value out of the entire sugarcane stalk. And that goes well beyond sugar. So in terms of that, if our strategy is anchored within us needing to increase the area under cane and to keep our growers within the industry and not getting them to look at alternative crops or maybe even exiting the industry, we need to make sure that we stabilize them first. Obviously, when you're looking at a subsistence type farming arrangement, the immediate and urgent need is to keep our black small scale growers afloat. And so that's why we have been able to support them in a targeted manner. Whilst we have done this, we have been then busy looking at medium to long term interventions which might require infrastructural intervention, systemic adjustments, so that the industry as a whole becomes self-sustaining and self-sufficient. So it is a larger conversation. It is not simply incentivizing them to stay small, far from it, because what we are looking at is defining a growth path for those small-scale growers. I said to you earlier that a lot of our black small-scale growers farm small areas. Those areas might be quite largely dispersed in terms of the two provinces that we operate in. But what we need to do is keep them there, keep on growing sugarcane, because we do need the sugarcane. We need more of it. We've still got local demand. We can't say that the market is shrinking. We've still got other things that we need to consider and we need to investigate. So what we've done with the assistance of our phase 1 of the master plan is we have really been very clear in assessing whether or not we have any viability in looking at things like a contribution to sustainable aviation fuel, looking at a contribution to polylactic acid, for example, and those kinds of participating in those other value chains over and above the current byproducts that we extract from the sugarcane stalk. Now, it's also about looking at, in terms of using that entire stalk, one of our mills is pretty much self-reliant in terms of its energy requirements because it uses its own bagasse that is created from the sugarcane. It's a leftover product. And so what do? They don't just leave it, they actually use it to fuel their operations. So I think it is a misunderstanding to think that we, through these structures, are keeping growers small. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And just to maybe further extrapolate our Reimagining the Sugarcane Industry strategy, we are looking to transform our industry. But that transformation must be broadly defined. It's obviously looking at innovation. It's looking at disruption. And it's looking at sustainability. It's looking at how do we make our industry from a production side be more competitive, enhance the efficiencies in the system, whilst simultaneously looking at whether there are alternative downstream options that we can pursue, like I said before, the aviation fuel and the polylactic acids, etc. But we also then need to make sure that we are far more inclusive, because together life is just so much sweeter, of course. So it has to be a collective and a collaborative effort where we're bringing in more small-scale growers, we're bringing in more black growers. We're also looking at how we reconfigure and make our mills more efficient, more competitive in terms of the production cycle. So I actually think it's really one of the industries that should be seen as a growth industry. The opportunities are endless, certainly, but it will take time, and that's where we do need government's continued support, because it is about some of those systemic and structural interventions which create an enabling policy environment for us to do what we actually need to do.
Wow, so clearly sugar is actually on the verge of great growth, possibly. But that's a discussion for another day. Viewers, you can stay tuned to Plaas TV and we will continue the discussion with Advocate Fay Mukaddam, the chairperson for SASA.